You, O Lord, have called us to watch and pray. Therefore, whatever be the sin against which we pray, make us careful to watch against it, and so have reason to expect that our prayers will be answered. In order to perform this duty aright, grant us grace to preserve a sober, equal temper, and sincerity to pray for your assistance. Amen. And that was, of course, written in the 18th century.
Wow. So good.
So I did a little bit research about some of these women and other stuff about women in the United Methodist Church. And it's fitting to start with the story of Susanna Wesley, who of course was the mother of John and Charles. There's the handout there that has the information.
You ready?
Yeah.
Susanna Wesley is the mother of one of church history's greatest dynamic duos. John and Charles are their mother's sons. She is the person who was responsible for their education and spiritual formation.
United Methodist historians say the fathers of the Methodist movement owe much of their success to their mother and the foundation built in their childhood home.
She had a spreadsheet before there were spreadsheets. She had an incredible organizational schedule for their dressing and changing clothes.
Born in 1669, Susanna Wesley was the youngest of 25. At age 19,
Wow.
She married Church of England pastor Samuel Wesley and bore 19 children. Managing a home took great planning, but she made time to nurture each child.
She would mark out at least an hour, and so it might well be that Tuesday at 3 was a time that was exclusively devoted to John, let's say. And that wasn't meaning she ignored him the rest of the week, but it meant that was their time to sit down and be together. And she did that with all of her children.
Susanna led by example. Her life and faith journey shaped Methodism in ways we see today.
We see in her and in her sons this tension between Puritan evangelicalism and Church of England prayer book order, spirituality, and sacramentalism. And I think we Methodists are best when we are both and not either or.
Long before women were ordained, Susanna would sometimes gather friends around the kitchen table and lead prayers while her preacher husband was away. She kept the parish going in his absence.
That was actually pretty radical. Now today, family devotion with friends, we wouldn't think anything about it. In the early 18th century, and her argument was, there was no one else to read, it needed to be done for the good of the people, I'll do it.
Susanna also planted the unconventional idea of letting lay people serve as local preachers.
When John started traveling the circuit and preaching, he was late, and he shows up. And a gentleman that he knew, a layman, was filling in for him. Well, he was aghast. A layman, kind of almost preaching. And you know who told him to take another look? His mother. And he listened, and he realized, this guy's doing a good thing. That changed the character of our Methodist revival.
Susanna Wesley is a major difference maker. And the differences that she made have lived on from the history of the 17th and 18th century well into the present moment because of the sons that she raised.
That leads me to infer that women of the 17th century evolved a rubber uterus.
Well, that's one way to look at it. And yet, I didn't later on, John or Charles object to the lay ministers and what they could actually do.
In a way they did. But they also, mainly because they got too carried away, which I think you covered in one of the other early American history of like circuit riders.
The doctrine was getting wild.
Yeah, they were doing too much that they weren't authorized to do.
Oh.
But Susanna Wesley, taking over the prayer and doing stuff, you could basically say she was the first United Methodist woman.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And we've evolved from that. It's interesting, what did your mother do? Whenever I hear about, mothers of like Susanna Wesley, whether are people who have done things, and it's like, well, what have I done? But you know what, my mother and your mother is no more important than Susanna Wesley.
They got us here.
Yeah, and they did their job, they did what they were supposed to do.
One thing that's not always covered is the amount of help they have. For one thing, the age spread would have your older children helping with the younger
Yeah.
children. But also, I know my grandmother hired out. It was common to have a local younger girl, not little, helping out with washing and cooking
Yeah.
and whatever. Because otherwise, I don't know how many suicides there were in that day, but I could see there being a lot.
Not for at least 25 years. Because
Well,
she
that's
was
true.
25.
Well, no, she didn't, obviously.
Well, her mother had
So-
25 and she had 19 or so.
Yeah, 19.
And it's like, I had 2, that was enough.
More than enough.
Even with modern technology and help today. So any,
They struggled with food preparation and availability, but they did not struggle with, college tuitions.
right,
A family of 25 today would be into the millions.
Well, I'm just thinking, well, of course, they wouldn't have used daycare, but daycare at one point cost my daughter more than their mortgage. It's 2 little ones. That was-
Yeah.
and you're right, as the older ones took care of the little ones and they usually brought in a maid or somebody to clean
Mhm.
because, kids had their jobs as well. Just-
And the mortality rate at that time point was like
I
45,
don't
50
know.
or something like that.
I actually looked for it and I couldn't find how many of her children lived to adulthood
Right.
and how many of her siblings lived to adulthood. But,
19 children, I'd have just spent the entire marriage, under the weather.
So any other questions about Susanna Wesley? Okay, the next one we're going to read about is Phoebe Palmer. She was born, as you can see there, almost, well, actually, I don't want to say how many days. What's today? 11 days, 7 days.
9 days.
9 days, 9 days. We'll celebrate her and my birthday. And my mother-in-law's, she passed away, so.
Well, so did Phoebe.
Yeah, I know. I just thought it was cool, I was like, oh, somebody, born the same day I was.
Yeah.
So can you elaborate a little bit on the holiness movement?
Phoebe Palmer has been called
No,
an
let's-
early feminist, a theologian, and a humanitarian. A legend in her own time, says historian Fred Day.
There's a great story related to her travels as an evangelistic speaker. She is riding a steamer and the boiler in the steamer catches fire. The ship is on fire and there's great panic, and she calmed the crowd by leading a hymn sing. The story goes that when the ship docked in New York, one of the passengers was heard to say, "Thank God for the Methodists."
In the 1800s, when only men were preachers, Palmer led weekly Bible studies, published books, and preached at more than 300 revival camp meetings.
She experienced and believed in the direct calling and work of the Holy Spirit in and through a person's life that would not allow them to keep silent.
Personal tragedy shaped Palmer's faith. She lost 3 of her 6 children with husband Walter Palmer. One in a fire that ignited when an oil lamp fell into the crib with the infant.
She was a person that knew great pain and hurt and tragedy in her life. But it was her experience of the power and presence of God's love in her life that was a source for her overcoming.
Palmer was key in establishing New York's Methodist Five Points mission. On the site of an old brewery, the ministry brought the healing presence of the Holy Spirit to residents in one of New York's poorest neighborhoods.
She was the developer of what was called the Tuesday Meeting for the Promotion of Holiness. Perfect love, she says, issues forth in passion for lives that serve humanity.
An interesting footnote, Palmer's daughter and namesake, Phoebe Palmer Knapp, followed in her mother's footsteps of service to the Methodist Church, composing over 500 hymn tunes, including the music for Fanny Crosby's Blessed Assurance.
So did that sort of answer your question, Robert?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, it was a promotion less about adherence to the church and more about the spirit nature of church.
She believed that promoting your holiness and your spirituality spread the word.
Yeah.
And I meant to bring some other notes, and I'm not sure where they disappeared to. I can't find them on my computer, and I thought I sent them to you, so I went back through the emails, and no, not there either. Another one that's lost in space. But she believed, getting out there and living the life,
Yeah.
not just talking about it.
Well, a true witness.
Now, the next one, Georgia Harkness, was a Methodist theologian and philosopher. And I thought it interesting that she was described as one of the first significant American female theologians, and was important to the movement of women in the United Methodist Church as clergy and doing more, and lay people.
Do you know when that happened?
No.
Okay.
Well, I've got a couple copies of her book, or she's written several books, but one of my favorite all-time books on theology is a Georgia Harkness book.
Is that right?
And she wrote a lot of books and did a lot of studies and promoted learning about the church.
Well, I have to think that ordination of women came along
Born
much
in
later in her
1891
life.
and ordained decades before women were given full clergy rights in her church, this Methodist pioneer persisted. Told she did not attend the all-male Boston University School of Theology, she instead earned a PhD and then became the first woman to teach theology in an American seminary. Georgia Harkness went on to write 37 books. In her time, Harkness notoriously confronted Karl Barth himself on his theology of female subordination. But she also inspired famous faith leaders like the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr.
I had the great privilege of reading some of your books and art. I've long admired your Christian witness and your sound theology.
Harkness's words and her witness of faith left an unmistakable mark on Methodism and the world, according to the head of the church's archives agency.
She grew to be a pronounced denouncer of racism and unbridled capitalism and the internment of Japanese Americans in internment camps during the Second World War, a great defender of women's rights, a promoter of women's ordination, and an ecumenist in a 60 or 70 year career as probably the most pronounced female theologian of her time.
Hers was once a household name, and Harkness's books have been favorites of seminarians present and past, like the Reverend Hero Park.
Because I studied the practical theology, the fact that she was a scholar and activist in the church as a woman was very impressive to me.
In 2016, the United Methodist Publishing House in Nashville, Tennessee, named their library for the woman who taught theology in words any church member could understand. Brian Milford is chief executive there.
It matters more today than ever. The church is called of God to make a difference in the world. And Georgia Harkness helped us understand how we serve that vocation, how we respond to God's call in our life to make a difference in the world.
Her hymns and prayers are staples in the United Methodist hymnal. In 1953, she penned the song, Hope of the World. She also continues to leave a mark on education. A Georgia Harkness Scholarship is offered for women seeking a second career in ordained ministry. Students at Garrett Evangelical, where Harkness taught for 11 years, graduate in red shoes as a tribute, stepping out to serve in the footsteps of Georgia Harkness.
So whenever we as clergy women get discouraged due to isms of the world, we should remember her daring faith in Jesus Christ.
Pick up a book by Georgia Harkness and read it. It will change your life.
She was very instrumental in getting the church reorganized because she was active during the merge in 67, 68. And you know, a lot of what she had to say applied to men and women. But she was a huge trailblazer for women in the service. And her books are awesome. And they're still, like they said, they're still used in reference today. And United Women in Faith have a Georgia Harkness scholarship book. And if you've noticed on this sheet, we're going in order of their birth. So Georgia Harkness died in 1974. Like, so, okay, maybe not. Okay, well, I plan to, yeah. So any questions about Georgia Harkness? I encourage you to read her books because I've read a couple of them and they open your eyes. Next is Frances Elizabeth Caroline Willard.
Which one is that one now?
Women's suffrage, women's rights, that one.
That one?
Frances Willard is a person who brought the involvement of women in and through the Methodist Church very much into the foreground.
Church historians have called this red-headed reformer the most widely known and loved Methodist woman since Susanna Wesley. In the late 1800s, Frances Willard was a professor and dean of women at a time few females went to college. But she may be best remembered for her 19 years as president of the Women's Christian Temperance Union in the U.S., which sought to ban the sale of alcohol. Willard saw men as the victims of the temptation of liquor, but believed the ultimate victims were women and children.
They weren't concerned about abstinence from alcohol for abstinence sake. They saw that the church had a message to proclaim to people that mothers and women needed to speak up about because of how social conditions in that time were really ruining people's lives. We remember Frances Willard only as a great temperance worker, would be remembered for a saying like, lips that touch liquor will never touch mine. I think that really minimizes the extent of what Frances Willard and other women like her in that period of time were concerned about.
The Temperance Union became the largest women's organization in the U.S. 150,000 members strong, the association moved beyond prohibition to argue for an 8-hour workday, raise the age of consent for girls and secure the right of women to vote. In the Methodist Church, Willard also pushed the envelope.
She was actually originally elected to General Conference before women could be elected. They had made plans to see if General Conference would seat them.
Willard didn't get to challenge General Conference that year. She was called home to care for her mother. Never married, she traveled extensively in her work.
She had a small desk. We think of a laptop computer nowadays. She had like the original laptop. When the train would get to a train station, if she needed to send off a telegram, she would jump off the train, quickly give the paper to the telegraph operator, and then get back on and continue on to her next destination.
Willard wrote several books, including one on learning to ride a bike after age 50.
She said learning to ride a bicycle is a whole lot like learning to live life. You've got to keep it pointed in the right direction, and every now and then you've got to give it a little kick with your feet as you're pedaling. Otherwise, the wheel will wobble and you'll fall off in the ditch.
Willard remained president of the Temperance Union until her death in 1898. Although she did not live to see it, her influence helped secure the passage of the 18th and 19th Amendments, prohibition, and women's suffrage. This faithful Methodist was the first woman honored with a place in the National Statuary Hall of the U.S. Capitol, setting her legacy in stone for future generations.
Frances Willard embodies that Wesleyan sense of practical divinity, that you just don't go to church to hear a religious message, but the religious message you hear changes not only your life, but changes the life of the world around you.
Many of the programs that she instigated and started are still in effect today. She was very well outspoken about spousal and child abuse, as well as children in the workplace. That's why, mainly why she was opposed, they were opposed against the alcohols, because alcohol, Robert, and people, well just, now people get too intoxicated and bad things happen. And she was looking out for those that didn't have a voice, because women couldn't vote. Women were still back then considered property. They had no rights, so they had no voice. And she changed a lot of that. And her books are, they're hard to find, I can tell you that. But I did read excerpts of one, and she's right up there with Georgia Harkness. Raising the age of consent was huge, because too many of the women or young ladies in their 12 and 13s, the younger teenage years, were getting forced into marriages. And she felt that was not right. And like they said, she had never married, and she just refused to put on that yoke of being subjected to a man's role.
When she was married, she would lose a lot of her travel, or, it would have to be a man that supported what she was doing.
And back then, that was unheard of, because she was so outspoken.
He'd have been ostracized as a man.
Well, she was ostracized by a lot of women.
Well, no, I'm sure she was. But you mentioned no rights. I mean, if a man wanted to beat his wife, beat his children, I mean, there was no law that said you had to feed them, house them.
Yeah. Men could,
And not
Abuse
all
can
men,
happen.
not all men did that.
No.
I mean, that's not, it's just there was no protection.
Spousal rape was
Oh, yeah.
legal.
That wasn't rape.
Yeah.
it was doing, the women's duty. It was her duty to suffer fools. I mean, men.
The
She's
whole
a loving
trouble-
widow, really she is.
The whole problem with the alcohol movement was that alcohol wasn't a cause, it was a symptom of, the economy was in turmoil, particularly as it led to the Great Depression. men felt emasculated in many cases, and so, you know, they self-medicated with alcohol, but the woman was always seen as the fixer in the family. And in families, the women were not fixing the situation, they couldn't. And they were available and vulnerable to that man who was intoxicated, so he beat him up.
Intoxicated, frustrated, and,
angry. I
And
mean,
ang-
there's frustration and then there's the anger.
right,
And, you know, women had no place to go. There were no women's shelters. You had to,
if you went home to your family, they'd probably send you back.
they would. That happened way too often.
Imagine how revolutionary it would have been had Ms. Harkness or Willard promoted psychotherapy instead of the riddance of alcohol.
Well, I don't know.
Alcohol's not so bad if it's in moderation. I enjoy a gin
Well,
drink,
yeah,
I enjoy a beer,
well, beers taste like beer.
but I would never beat up my wife.
Right, moderation was an unheard of, I mean, you chose how to live your life and nobody could tell you,
Well, a lot of kids were raised on drinking beer,
yeah.
Moonshine.
especially in the Germanic countries. And
It was safer than well water.
yes, and, you know, when you're raised on that, it becomes, you become intolerant to it and you drink more and,
But
But-
psychotherapy was kind of a new, I mean, I don't think there
Oh,
was
that-
such a thing.
That didn't happen until
No.
our lifetimes.
Yeah. The understanding, the underlying causes. But they would know, they weren't stupid. They would know what caused your husband to, a wife would see what was gonna happen when he couldn't get a paycheck. A wife is gonna see what's gonna happen when he comes. I mean, it wasn't like we didn't understand, there was just nothing you could do about it. And the man might even understand, but like you said, you self-medicate. It's available, your buddies wanna have a good time.
but during the lives of Georgia Harkness and Frances Willard, women's groups were becoming bigger and stronger, and they became the basis of United Methodist Women. And I'm gonna talk about them a little bit more.
But it was Harkness who led to the ordination of women, is that correct?
Yeah,
So that was much later, into the 20th
well,
century.
she died in 1974.
Yeah, I see.
But basically, you know, Susanna Wesley was starting to lay the groundwork for women being involved in the church with her basically teaching Sunday school, teaching, you know, reading to the kids, promoting women. And it's just been an evolving thing ever since she,
Does anybody know when women won the vote at a federal level?
wasn't it
We'll know in a second, Debbie's looking it up.
1921?
Because that's all related to this.
21 sounds familiar.
The,
I mean, they're already,
was it the 19th Amendment? Granting women the right to vote?
I don't know.
Women's voting rights in the United States became a national effective on August 26th of 1920 with the ratification of the 19th Amendment to the United States Constitution, which states the right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be detained or denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex.
All right,
So 1920, August 26th.
but they still had Jim Crow laws.
Right.
So now we're going to move into Teresa Hoover, and the video that Dr. Jim was showing earlier was actually the pastor in a service from her church.
be surprised how many times these people come out of left field with all kinds of resolutions that would greatly diminish the responsibility and the autonomy of the women's division.
During times when many women have doubted their role and power in male-dominated church hierarchies, Teresa Hoover, Deputy General Secretary of the Women's Division of the Board of Global Ministries for more than 2 decades, was an unflagging and unapologetic advocate for the political, spiritual, and economic autonomy of women around the world.
It is an organization that sees mission in many places, including in our own heads and hearts, so that ideas, developing ideas, sustaining programs of education, in my view, is as much mission as making available $1,000 to dig a well in Nairobi.
From her earliest beginnings with the Little Rock Methodist Council, to her decade of service as a Christian Service field worker, to her participation in the World Council of Churches, Teresa Hoover seemed to be clear about one thing. If she was going to do God's work, she was going to do it boldly, intelligently, and with complete commitment. She would always bear in mind that women's voices, visions, and concerns historically guided, affected, and strengthened the church. And as a United Methodist woman, doing the mission of Jesus Christ often meant going to the mat on behalf of the oppressed and dispossessed, even if that meant butting heads with male clergy and membership.
Teresa Hoover was an individual, is, always will be a person to whom many individuals throughout not only United Methodism, throughout the ecumenical movement, and literally around the world have looked to not only for inspiration but for vision.
In her earliest days, Teresa faced many hurdles because of her sex. And as one of the first women of color in the women's division, she also faced and broke through racial barriers.
First of all, they really had no power over me. Even though in the United Methodist Church, we are more advanced than a lot of Protestant churches, but we still have the age-old battle of women and minorities, and I always represented both. As I worked for the Women's Division and became the executive for the Women's Division, what I always heard from most of my detractors was, oh, they really meant aggressive, and that sort of thing. And I said, well, you wouldn't be breathing if you weren't aggressive in my position. And I think in the church, I would have gone further quicker had I heard that what they perceived as aggression. I simply saw it as expressing myself.
She blazed many trails for us. Most of these churches had never had a black person to come in even as a speaker. And so she had some rough times, but she was equal to the task.
Ms. Hoover's work through the Women's Division was always on the cutting edge. She deeply believed in Jesus' mandate to care for the least of these, and that the church needed to be held accountable for its mission. A prophetic voice, she challenged racially separatist tactics by white church leaders, like that of the central jurisdiction.
The Methodist Church was divided into 5 jurisdictions. Jurisdictionally dividing the map of the United States into 5 parts. But then there was one jurisdiction called Central Jurisdiction, and it covered 39 of the then 49 states. And in that jurisdiction for all of the black Methodist churches. And that was a compromise reached at the time of the Southern Church and the Methodist Episcopal, which was the Northern Church, and the Protestant Church. Those three came together to form the then Methodist Church.
I thought that was rain coming down.
So she is still living?
No, she passed away, I just looked it up because it wasn't on here. She was born 9/7 in 1925, and she passed away December 21st of 2013.
Relatively short life. She could have been much older anyway.
Well, it's been 83. But she, you know, she was very active in the United Methodist Women, being the leader. And United Methodist Women is an organization that is worldwide. Our purpose, we are a community of women whose purpose is to know God and experience freedom as whole persons through Jesus Christ, to develop a creative, supportive fellowship, and to expand concepts of mission through participation in the global ministries of the church. Our mission is United Women in Faith seeks to connect and nurture women through Christian spiritual formation, leadership development, creative fellowship, and education so that they can inspire, influence, and impact local and global communities. Our vision is turning faith, hope, and love into action on behalf of women, children, and youth around the world. There are over 500,000 members of United Women in Faith worldwide. Stacey Abrams, who is a politician from, is it Georgia or South Carolina?
I think it is.
Georgia.
She and her mom, retired Methodist pastor Carolyn Abrams, are going to be the keynote speakers at the quadrennial, every 4 years conference in Indianapolis in May. And a bill supported or sponsored by United Women in Faith usually passes. My role in the United Women in Faith is I am the spiritual coordinator for the Oregon, Ohio Conference. And I am on several committees, including Soul Care and annual conference.
Would you repeat the Oregon what?
Oregon, Idaho.
Okay, I heard Iowa and that.
Or did I say Idaho? I might have.
I don't know, but
I
Oregon,
heard
Idaho.
I heard
She heard
Idaho.
Idaho, see?
I've said Oregon, Idaho so many times and it's like, women in the United Methodist Church and denominations worldwide are stepping up to make a difference as lay leaders, board members, and clergy. We are not sitting quietly anymore, as well as politicians, but we work toward that. And as Helen Reddy sang in her song, I Am Woman, Hear We Roar. When you put women, a lot of women together, things get done. At your local church, if you need something done, usually you go ask the women's group.
It makes me think of Mothers Against Drunk Drivers. When that originated, everybody says, oh, that's not gonna make any difference.
Oh, it did.
It's made a huge difference.
Huge difference.
In the last, let's see, 70 years, women have stepped out with the support of church to lead legislative and civic roles where they have empowered others, and it just keeps on going. We nurture, as mothers, we nurture our children and hope that they can nurture their children. But as a group, we reach out to everywhere. There's not, if you ask the United Women in Faith or any women's group to support something or to go help and do something, you usually have a committee in within days and it'll be done. So, any questions about women in the United Methodist Church?
gotta wonder why it took so long. Because the founders' mothers, I mean, she had some power. I mean, she kind of laid the law down for her sons in a lot of cases. And yet, we have a very strong ability in a lot of areas to forget and not see. Oh, well, that was just the outlier, or, different circumstance. We make excuses. Because it took a long time for literally Susanna Wesley as a leading theologian to reach where we are today.
And if you really think about it, though, it took us over 1,600 years since Jesus was born to actually become, she was born in, 1669. I figure it was probably about 1685 or something like that she probably started getting more active.
You're talking about
Susanna Wesley.
Yeah.
We've come a long way in 400 years.
And yet it's only been, as we just discovered, it's only been 100 years since women had a vote in this country.
And we
That's not very long.
Well, and we were among the last countries. There's a lot of countries where women aren't allowed to vote now, or, are still considered property, but in what we would call the modern world, we were among the last.
Yeah, and as far as access powers, we were way behind in a lot of things because we were still basically a young country.
There's a lot going on.
Well, it took men to really screw things up.
I wasn't gonna go there.
But to be fair, in countries that there are women leaders in the world, and I don't know that they've had all that much more success. Each country has its ups and downs, and I don't know that it's always the men that mess it up.
No, women have made mistakes too. Mistakes are not, they're unisex.
Yeah. Well,
and biracial, and Teresa Hoover being the first black woman to really get out there and be public and she worked with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I always get those mixed up. Whenever you talk about Martin Luther, I keep wanting to go back.
Keep going back to the Germanic.
But women have been there, and we're not going to disappear.
Well, that's good.
And to be fair, men don't want you to disappear any more than they want anyone who disagrees with them. Anybody who's pushing your buttons, you want to disagree, you want to disappear, and whether they're male or female, black or white, it's just their fact that they're pushing your buttons is what's. But you've got to, it's a pain sometimes, but those are the people that can change.
And I thought it was interesting that legislature that is supported by United Women in Faith usually passes, because we've thought it out, we've planned, we've researched, and then we put our name behind it.
Got experience.
To your point though, change on any level about anything only happens as a result of distress. If everything is working fine, there's no incentive to change. Adam and Eve found this out because for a while everything was working just fine for them in the Garden of Eden and nothing happened. It's only when God exiled them and cursed a woman with childbirth and cursed the man with having to work for a living, that's when change occurs.
Well, and it kind of goes back, back to, if you want to go back to the Garden of Eden, it was working, and then they had to, don't mess with what's working, and they did.
Yeah, so we adopted the euphemism, if it works, don't fix it.
But who is it working for is probably the bigger question.
Well, exactly.
So Dr. Tim, did you have anything to add?
One of the things that that struck me, you were talking about how long it took for these things to take place. In '68, when the Methodist Church and the Evangelical United Brethren Church joined together to form the United Methodist Church, it was the Methodists that had already started to ordain women as pastors, and the EUB had not. And one of the sticking points that they had to iron out was the EUB did not like this idea of there being ordained women clergy, and that the Methodists said, well, this is how it's going to be. But the Methodists then were far behind in racism, and they had this, and you heard Theresa Hoover talk about the Central Conference, which wasn't geographic, or the central jurisdiction. It wasn't geographic, it was simply all the black churches in the United States. And it was the EUB that said, okay,
It's gone.
it's gone. And the Methodist Church didn't want to get rid of that either. So those were two of the, among many, many debatable things that had to change, and that was the central jurisdiction and the ordination of women. They each had to adopt the other more liberal agenda on that.
Before we break our arms patting our backs, I remember one of our first, I think it was Pastor Karen was our first woman minister. I don't remember for sure, but I remember an older couple who was going to this church, and he said, well, he wasn't going where there was a woman minister. And they tried another one, and a few weeks later they were back. But, but you know, you see it in, you know, men that don't want to go to a woman doctor. You see it in women that don't want a man kindergarten teacher. We've carried this baggage a lot.
It's still going on in Baker City. The Presbyterian, the Methodist, and the Episcopal churches are the only three churches in Baker City that will accept woman clergy.
Is that right? Not the Nazarenes? Wow.
Yeah.
The Episcopal priest told me that he went to the, what do they call it, the Ministerial Alliance meeting. And he said that they made the statement that that woman at the Presbyterian church will never be a part of our group.
Wow.
And he's told them, well, then neither will I.
Yeah.
So there's three of us that refused to join the Ministerial Alliance because of that.
So you started your own little group?
Yeah, so we got our own little group.
And everybody's welcome.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, you know, draw the circle. If you're excluded, draw your own circle bigger. And that actually works, especially if you're having more fun than they are.
That's right.
Next week it's Robert's turn.
Yeah, we're going to talk about music.
Oh, good. I like music.
How what?
I like music.
Oh, yeah, me too.
Are we going to sing?
Well, I wasn't planning on it, but I do have short snippets of recorded music.
Cool.
It's amazing the number of, you know, the amount of music that was produced by a couple of these women.
Over 500 for somebody.
Yeah.
Was that Georgia? It was either Georgia or Phoebe.
Yeah. I guess I didn't write it down.
I just remember it. I didn't write it, but I don't remember it.
It might have been, I'll bet it was Phoebe's daughter. I think it was Phoebe's daughter that had done the music for like over 500 hymns.
And we will talk about Fanny Crosby next week.
Who?
Fanny Crosby was a very prolific hymn writer.
That's her book there.
Yeah, and there's a history book about her. Robert's got a video on her.
Does she sing? We're looking for music. We're looking for music that I don't have to sing.
I was not aware of her name, but I'm going to do some homework.
There you go.
Well, there's a book right there. You can start with that blue one. There.
Are we gonna help her or just watch?
Thank you, Cindy.
Well,
May I borrow this?
Yes, go ahead.
when you consider that it was that arm and it's like, okay, this hurts to move that.
Is it good for it to be pushed a little or not?
It varies. I'm trying to save up for, when I go to Colorado,
When do you leave?
20th.
That would be cool.
I believe a lot of Fanny Crosby's songs that she wrote, she used a male pseudonym because they were not accepting women.
It's always good to look at the list of authors, and when you're singing a song and you see
Oh, I
who
do, yeah.
wrote it on the bottom, to look back in the back of the hymnal and look and see what other songs they wrote, and you'd be surprised.
Oh, I didn't realize that was there. I do sometimes look who wrote the words and the music and the dates. It can be interesting.
But yeah, there's a complete index in the back of who wrote what songs and what other songs they, what numbers, and then the metrical, just, all that other stuff.
But that's another thing. If you're going to put yourself out there like these women did, you can't use a pseudonym. People know who you are, they see you,
Yeah. It's sort of like when Benjamin Franklin wrote the Silence Be Good letters. He used to, he wrote under that name because, Benjamin Franklin was too well known. And I got the name mixed up somewhere. But, a lot of women have had to write using initials or a pen name.
Yeah, initials work.
And a lot of women in business have to do that too. I was watching this one video of these. It was the world's smartest men competition or something like that, and this one lady, she had one of the top 5 scores, and they said, "You can't be here. Out you go."
But you found me.
Well, and another one is the movie Imitation Code, with the where they broke the German.
Oh, Enigma.
No, well, yeah, they broke that, but I can't think of the Imitation Game.
What the name of the movie was, you mean?
Yeah.
I thought it was Enigma, but no, Imitation would sound good. It's an awesome movie, I loved it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Women make a difference, and it started, our church paid attention to somebody's mother.
Yeah.
Do you think that helped? That, everybody, as far as I know, I suppose it's nothing is everybody, acknowledges the fact that Susanna Wesley was a huge influence on the formation of the Methodist Church. She was Anglican, and both of her sons and her husband were Anglican, but because of her position, obviously her husband didn't agree with her. He was aghast. What do you mean these people are preaching? These men and women that are lay people.
But it's always been, it's always been the women who sat at home and read the Bible and taught the children and to learn, to read and write and give them the education before they could go to schools or anything. A lot of places there weren't schools. So she taught her children well, and they acknowledged her for that.
Does anyone know, that brings to mind, the Jewish tradition, they always say it's the man who's teaching, doing the teaching, reading the Koran, not the Koran, but that probably would apply too, but the Talmud and is doing the reading. How much of that got done by mothers while husbands were, doing business, maybe out, gone, and how much of what we take for granted or read right over the top of. If it's a man's job to go make a living, he's not always going to be home.
Let's see, it was a woman's job to teach the children, but yet at the same time, men didn't want women to learn.
Yeah.
So there's that little, what do you call it, paradox that, they didn't want women
You
to
see
go
the wrong move?
Yeah.
That would answer your question.
Are we done here? Any other questions, comments?
Good job.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Music is next, and then we're gonna take like a 3-week break.
Hmm.
We won't be back until middle of January.
13th, I think it says. I need
Well,
to
that's today, isn't it?
No, today's the 9th.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm looking at January instead of December.
So yeah, January 13th is when we will be back again, but next week we'll still be here.
Yeah.
Right.
What is that on January 13th? What is Articles of
Article
Religion?
religions and
Is that
confession
a
of faith.
gathering of some kind?
That is the, those are 2 of our doctrinal statements.
That was the book she had here a
I
couple
believe
of
we
weeks
got
ago.
Articles of
Rome, I
Religion
think
was
that's it.
primarily written by
Oh,
John
we won't
Wesley,
know
although
what I see.
we have changed them around a lot. And then the Confession of Faith comes from the Evangelical United Brethren.
Okay, so what are we doing on the 13th?
Well, hopefully, we're gonna argue our heads off over it. We're gonna go through them. There's like 10 or 12 articles in each one, and we're gonna read them, and then we're gonna decide if we believe them or not.
Oh,
Are you
good
gonna send
deal.
those to us ahead of time so we have time to read them and write down our thoughts and arguments?
Yeah, I think I've got it
Okay.
in a digital format, so I'll be sending it out. We'll decide if we believe it or not.
So is that something the church requires of us, or is that your own innovation?
It is considered the 2 of several doctrinal statements, meaning if you're a United Methodist, here's what we believe.
Yes,
Yeah.
okay.
But Methodists believe in arguing, so if you don't believe it, they won't kick you out.
And that's
Okay,
gonna lead into the polity and structure class on the 27th of January.
I see.
So it's basically a 2-part
And that was was that when John Wesley brought those 2 together?
No, John Wesley, when he started bringing pastors over into the United States, before it was the United States, he sent them with the Articles of Religion.
Okay.
This is what you're
And then the other one, the Confession of Faith,
Confession of
comes from the
Faith
other one?
came
was-
from the Evangelical United Brethren Church, which
Okay,
is
so
a
when did-
completely different,
When did we
Right.
merge though?
in 1968.
68, okay, got it.
But each one had in their forming articles, in their constitutions, the Methodists said, you will never change the Articles of Religion. They will remain no matter what. And then the Evangelical United Brethren said, you will never change the Confession of Faith. You cannot. So when these 2 denominations became one denomination, they both had rules that said they couldn't give it up. So now when you look in our Book of Discipline, which is our primary rule book for the United Methodist Church, they're side by side in the Book of Discipline, and we just simply had to accept both of them.
Okay.
And they essentially say the same thing, just in a little bit different way.
Well, it's hard for me to imagine that as a church body, we would dispute anything in those documents. But what if we do?